Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified. In another session of uh, recap, we are here with the following news. So, in the past 1 week, we covered close to 20 topics in the preliminary section and close to 10 topics in the mains section. So, the purpose of these sessions are first to revise your concepts, and then second purpose is with respect to the reinforcement of the concepts that you have learned in the past 1 week. So without further ado, let us begin the session. So on Monday, the session was taken by Vaibhav Sir. And with respect to the preliminary examination, we took 4 important topics. The first one was with respect to the World Economic Forum. The second one was with respect to the Yemen conflict. Right. So the first topic that was taken was with respect to, invasive species. So let us discuss the features with respect to invasive species in India. What are invasive species? Invasive species are those kind of species which are found in the environment which have the following certain features. First one being they are very easy to adapt to the new area. Second one, they are very easy in reproducing themselves. The context of this news was that recently Gambusia fish was termed as an invasive species, right? So the third feature with respect to the invasive species is with respect to the harm that it does to the property as well as economy, right? The next disadvantage of any invasive species is with respect to the harm it does to the native plants and animal species. Then another disadvantage with respect to the invasive species is their very less intergenerational time. So what is the meaning of intergenerational time? That these species reproduce so easily and then new species grow very fast. So because of this very low intergenerational time, what happens is that the number of those species in particular environment rises so rapidly that it becomes very uncontrollable. Then with respect to the invasive species, the next point was that they have very high tolerance to the external factors. External factors such as change in the pH of water could be one factor, overall change in the water or change in the temperature or climate could be another factor, and so on, right? And then lastly, another factor was with respect to high capability of proliferation, right? So this was the first topic that was taken with respect to your preliminary examination. The key point to remember is that in recently Gambusia fish was termed as one of the invasive species that is available in the Indian environment. Another similar concept that is related to this, which has already been asked in your mains examination, is with respect to allelopathy. So what is allelopathy? Allelopathy is the positive or negative impact that is undertaken by one species when it comes into contact with other species in terms of their chemical exchange. So this could have a positive impact too as well as negative impact too. So this was asked, I think 3 to 4 years back, this was asked in your mains examination. So these kind of unique terms such as invasive species or allelopathy, however they might look very mundane to you, but they might be asked in your mains examination. The next topic that was taken with respect to your preliminary examination was NISAR. So what is NISAR? NISAR is a short form of NASA ISRO synthetic aperture radar. So as the name suggests, it is a synthetic aperture radar that is located in space in the form of satellite. Usually what we see that satellites are sent to the space and radars are the ground locations on which the satellite sends signal to. But the unique aspect of this program, that is a partnership between India's ISRO and NASA is that a satellite, a radar will be sent to space in the form of satellite, and that satellite will be able to track first the map, the global map in 12 days. It will be a lower Earth satellite. So what is the meaning of lower Earth satellite? That it will be stationed at the range of 747 kilometers above the Earth. Then it will provide what are the merits or advantages of this agreement or arrangement, that it will provide spatially and temporally consistent data that will be able, that we will be able to use for, say, let us say, policy formulation, better mineral exploration and prospecting, so on and forth, right? So the next advantage with respect to this is usage from resources mapping to disaster projection. So now why do we say that usually what happens is that either a satellite or a radar is used for resource mapping or for disaster projection, right? But the uniqueness of this project is that it caters to both L band and S band. What is the meaning of L band? L band means a band in which the frequency is very low. So what does low frequency do? Low frequency enables us to have a kind of low penetration which can be used for mapping of forest resources, right? Similarly, S band will lead to mapping of resources such as minerals or better urban planning, so on and forth. And the lastly, the advantage of this phenomena is with mechanism is with respect to it uses the SAR technique to sweep large areas with high resolution. Usually what happens is that we are not able to sweep large number of areas, and high resolution satellites are centered around very narrow domain. But advantage with this satellite is that it will be able to provide large sweep, that means large area, broad coverage of area with a high resolution, right? Next we come to the terms such as bioprospecting. What is the meaning of prospecting? To learn the concept of bioprospecting, let us examine what is the meaning of term prospecting. So prospecting means, let us say in very basic terms, what do you mean by prospecting? Suppose you say I am looking forward to the prospects of joining X and Y institution or X and Y university, right? So prospects means future usage, right? Future usage or future possibility of an existing method or technique, that is called as prospecting. Now bioprospecting, coming to bioprospecting means when we use this prospecting methods with along with in context of biologically active organisms such as plants or animals, we call it bioprospecting. Now what are the key points to remember? That it has key advantages in terms of, first, novel compounds. Novel compounds means, see, what is happening is that in the recent times we are usually facing the challenges for which conventional methods are not able to help us, right? For example, if we take the example of recent discoveries in the form of solutions to global pandemics or issues like malaria, the solutions have come from biology, that is specifically from plants and animal species. So the advanced research is not now concentrated in the labs of the world, but it is out there. So as famous writer that is Tolkien, he had remarked, the world is not in your books, the world is out there. Similarly, in the context of bioprospecting also, we can say that the world is not confined to the books or labs, the world is out there. So what you have to do, what scientists have to do, they have to go outside and they have to find the relationships between the biologically active compounds and their interaction with respect to other issues, right? Then the second advantage can be with respect to the medical breakthroughs it can provide us. The next recommendation or key advantage of bioprospecting could be biotechnological innovations. So as we have already discussed, many kind of biological innovations are happening. For instance, with respect to the malaria treatment vaccine, for which recently in the past couple of years, scientists from China got Nobel Prize. Then another advantage is with respect to the conservation. Then another advantage could be with respect to the cultural preservation. Here cultural preservation can also be expanded to see the preservation of natural species in the context of natural biomes. Then there are economic opportunities. So obviously when you go for bioprospecting, you intermix various species, so on and forth. What you get some economically remunerative ideas, you get some economically remunerative outcomes. So those outcomes can be used for other economic opportunities that can be used. Next, environmental sustainability, and further it further promotes scientific research. So these kind of, again, that is what we are discussing here, that such concepts like allelopathy, invasive species, right? So bioprospecting, so on and forth, these can come directly as a 10 marker in your GS paper 1 mains examination, which deals with geography, or GS paper 3 that deals with environment and environmental sustainability. Now let us discuss what one of the main topic, the first main topic of the day that was taken was with respect to civil society. What was the context of the news? The context was that center, that is union government, had cancelled the FCRA license. What is FCRA? FCRA is this act of parliament which enables the NGOs or civil society organizations to receive funds from the foreign contributors. So they have to get registered under FCRA, and then only the NGOs or civil society organizations can receive funds from foreign donors. So what was the context? The center has cancelled the FCRA license of Center for Policy Research over the allegations of funding of various protests, right? Now in this context, our lecture was focused around the concept of civil society, its origins and development, and what are the issues and challenges with respect to civil society in India. So before going ahead, let us recap what is the meaning of civil society. Let us begin by definition, that civil society is a sphere of uncoerced collective action. First key term over here is uncoerced, that is people are coming together on their own volition. Then second aspect is with respect to the collective action. First is being, either the action can be of two types. First is uncontrolled, that is unified action or unitary action, that is taken up by the individual. But however, in the context of civil society, we always say that the action is collective in nature, and again it is very organically enthused action, right? And then the other key term is around shared interest, purpose and values. So the shared interest could be, let us say, water collection or water preservation, conservation. Another could be policy changes that should be brought. Another could be an issue of accountability in governance, right? Another could be an issue of environmental sustainability, tribal rights, so on and forth. So Vaibhav Sir had clearly depicted this beautiful image in the context of civil society. So this is what does this signify? This shows the rubric of government, overall government architecture or state architecture, in which the threads are state. First could be the state, second could be the private sector, and the third could be the civil society. And the civil society is somewhat the interface which binds all the other sectors together, right? This is the public sector, this is the private sector, and this is civil society organization. And the collective action that is taken in the context of all three is understood to be a collective organic action which has got the consensus of all the stakeholders which are involved in the process. And subsequently, why this is important? That because this kind of action gains the most legitimacy. Then for your convenience, we have taken this slide which depicts the significance of various civil society organizations and their contribution to the nation building. Right? You can take the screenshots of this website, or you can obviously try and sit with a pen and paper, and you can always add value to your understanding. So the first one being very famous. Do you know another? Let us revisit. Do you know that one of the famous legislations in even in India, that is RTI, what was outcome of civil society activism? So what the context was, in 1990, there was a civil servant, just like you are aspiring to be a civil servant, that is Aruna Roy. She was working over there in Rajsamand district of Rajasthan, and she saw that there were various issues with respect to governance, such as bureaucrats and strongman nexus. So minimum wages were denied to the local populace for the work that they were doing in the nearby quarries and mines. So what happened was that this issue of not providing for minimum wages compounded to she found out that the root cause of this kind of harassment of locals is because there is lack of transparency in the maintenance of registers of wages, right? So what she asked for, that she took collective action along with various other stakeholders and local populace, and she devised a mechanism of right to information. So this is the backdrop of Right to Information Act in India. Now let us discuss about the contribution of various NGOs with respect to India. That is, first is Self-Employed Women's Association. You must have all heard the name of Ila Bhatt. She is the pioneer of this organization, and this organization works for the development and promotion of women's cause. Then there is an NGO that is by the name of CRY, that is Children Rights and You. Then there is an NGO with the name of Pradhan, Professional Assistance for the Development and Action, which focuses on rural development. Then there is a very famous NGO which comes from time to time, you must have seen in news, that is Greenpeace India, which is an arm of Greenpeace International. Again, the purpose of this NGO is limited to government's advocacy when it comes to environmental sustainability and environmental rights. You must have all heard, and you must be reminded of this Akshay Patra Foundation, because we discussed this foundation in detail when it came to the main lecture from which these slides are derived. So Akshay Patra Foundation is so efficient, and the working is so transparent that many states have outsourced their midday meal programs to Akshay Patra Foundation. Then there is Teach for India. And by the way, many of your students who usually think that while preparing, how can I contribute to the nation building, the cause of nation building, or the causes of developing India or so, you can always apply to these kind of NGOs for their fellowships or internships. The internships last for usually 1 month or so. You can get permanently attached also, but you can also work part-time. So young and brilliant minds can apply for Teach for India fellowship, and then you will get an opportunity to teach the most backward sections of the society, and that way you will be able to gain social good, right? Then there is HelpAge India. This NGO particularly works with respect to the development of development and issues related to old age homes in India. And then Sneha, that is Society for Nutrition, Education and Health, that specifically focuses on maternal health and child rights. Let us discuss specific NGOs which have contributed to the cause of good governance in India. Now these NGOs are important for you with respect to, first, that is improving the governance, and then second, along similarly in GS2, social justice is again a part of your syllabus. So these NGOs work as very apt examples of how civil society keeps the state in check. So now problem with Indian state is that if we take, there is a very famous theory of Hamza Alawi, that is a concept of overdeveloped state. So because of our colonial past, the state apparatus was developed. However, the economic and social apparatus could not be developed in that wavelength. What was the subsequent challenges that we faced? That although state became very strong, see, ideally in the West, what happened? Society developed out after Renaissance. What happened? Society developed and society got matured. But and then later on, because of the industrial revolution and so on and forth, economy also developed. And to cater the demands of improving and evolving society and economy, state came to being. But what is the experience of post-colonial nations in this context? The experience of post-colonial nations is that the apparatus of state was imposed upon by the foreigners, that is Britishers in India. So because of limited development of our social structure and economic structure before the development of state, the state came to be called as an overdeveloped state. So what does overdeveloped state do? Overdeveloped state sees all other sectors with a skeptical view. And again, along with this, what does the overdeveloped state do? Overdeveloped state has a kind of patronizing view with respect to all other sectors. So that is the primary reason that NGOs or civil society organizations are always seen as a skeptical viewpoint with respect to the state. Now, various examples with respect to the NGOs or civil society organizations that have functioned very well in the context of good governance. First, they can be used in your GS paper 2. Then again, in the context of your GS paper 4 also, these organizations work very well to provide or substantiate your understanding and examples. The first one being, you all must have read the documents, the beautiful documents and legislative summaries that are published by the PRS Legislative Research. So it provides research support to members of parliament, and what could be better than providing assistance and help to the members who are the direct representatives of the people in the lower house, right? Then ADR works for, specifically it has worked for various reforms that are linked to electoral democracy in India. Then NCPRI, that is National Campaign for People's Right for Information, that again this NGO has specifically worked for the transparency in government and better implementation of RTI Act. Then Accountability Initiative is again an NGO which provides research and advocacy for public finance and governance. And most importantly, what are the bottlenecks with respect to the government structure in India? It is not policy formulation mostly. Policy formulation happens with a lot of enthusiasm and high hopes. The problem comes when it is with respect to the delivery of service or grassroots bottlenecks. So these are the kind of NGOs, Accountability Initiative, who are working on ground for the improvement of service delivery. Then there is Center for Policy Research, which we just read in the context of its FCRA license being cancelled. Then there is the NGO by the name of Common Cause. Again, it has helped supported and improved the functioning of a state in the terms of providing good governance recommendations, transparency and accountability. Then there is an NGO by the name of Jan Agrah that is specifically located and focused around the issues of urban governance in India. And then there is an NGO by the name, civil society organizations, pardon me, by the name of Center for Good Governance. Right. So this is a brief summary of and value addition to your existing knowledge with respect to various social sector NGOs, and again with a specific reference to the government sector NGOs, which are making the democracy, taking the democracy merely from a procedural standpoint to a mature and substantive democracy. Then we also discussed with respect to the civil society organizations, what can be the way forward. So then what are the key recommendations or suggestions? That independence of judiciary must be respected, because independence of judiciary, if independence of judiciary is there, then only it can provide independence to the functioning of NGOs. So how, from where do these NGOs or civil society organizations derive their power? Article 19 clause 1a, what does it say? Freedom of speech and expression. Then 19 clause 1c, what does it say? Right to form association. So these are the fundamental rights which have been enshrined in the Constitution of India with specific reference to the right to freedom of speech and expression. So these rights, however, presently are covered by lot of reasonable restrictions and the attitude of state. So what is the way forward? That state must have a shift of attitude, right? Not everyone, not every NGO has to be looked at from the standpoint of suspicion. You have to make, again, state cannot obviously ask for reasonable classification, right, from the standpoint of the common people, but state should also have the equal capacity of reasonably classifying what NGOs are maybe troublemakers or what NGOs are genuinely working on the ground. So these are the suggestions and way forward with respect to the functioning and improvement of status of NGOs in India. Then we discussed the issues with respect to World Trade Organization and the dispute resolution mechanism that is being followed by the WTO. What are the key issues over here? That dispute resolution mechanism of WTO, what is the problem? It is being defunct. It is being defunct for the past couple of years. And then because we are anticipating that the recent there is going to be a recent meet in February in Abu Dhabi with respect to the WTO ministerial conference. So before that, we are expecting that this dispute resolution mechanism of the WTO will be looked into and will be further. We hope that this kind of the WTO will again gain its significance in the world trade. So what did we discuss? We discussed the origin and issues associated with WTO, that you can go and revisit the slides. Then we discussed about the genesis of WTO, what are the key issues involved, and then lastly we discussed about the issues and challenges with respect to the WTO in India. So adding further value to your understanding, you can say that what are the challenges before WTO in the present context. The first one being rollback of USA. So USA is, again, if you must have read in the world history, what did USA do before the advent of Second World War? It was following a kind of protectionist policy. So whenever it is said that whenever capitalism is in crisis, it tries to self-protect itself. So right now what we can see is that America is under a self-protection and preservation mode. So that is why we saw that when Trump was president, USA used to continuously threaten that we will come back, we will roll back, or we will call our representatives back from WTO. Ironically, institutions like WTO and all these global institutions are the brainchild of previous American presidents. Then again, what are the issues, what are the challenges? Since economic hegemony of USA is declining, so it has led subsequently to the recession or secession from the global institutions. Why? Because again, these institutions used to be the extended arm of making their own foreign policy, right? For example, a very famous Prussian scholar, Clausewitz, he used to say that war is continuation of politics by the other means. Similarly, economic war is again the continuation of what? Politics. to gain or to preserve the national or self-interest was the core idea behind formulation of these kind of organizations, right? So since economic hegemony of USA is declining, who is taking the space over here? China. China is taking the space of economy from the USA. Then in the, you must be remaining what is the context over here? Global instabilities. Global instabilities in the context of rising wars, along with the rise of trade wars and trade disparities, and then again the developing world as well as underdeveloped countries now have an option. Erstwhile there was no option or to go from towards either IMF for loans, soft loans, or WTO for free trade. But now, because of the rise of minilateralism, that we again, the concept of minilateralism was discussed in previous weeks DNS, and again we took the same concept of minilateralism in the in the first recap edition as well. So because of the rise of minilateralism, what is happening? It is providing challenge, because nobody is interested to go to WTO now. Because why? First, these kind of institutions have become talk shop, and then again these the institutions are again now seen as only in the context of the institutions who are furthering the interests of developed world, right? Again, the another challenge with respect to WTO is that China has gained and developed parallel institutions in the form of AIIB, BRICS Development Bank, and then they are also signing their own treaties that are individual free trade agreements and bilateral agreements with important nations of the world. So they are not bound by the treaties or agreements that are undertaken by the WTO. And then again, the last challenge is very prominent, and we will again see this in the coming slides, that there is a bias against the developing countries in the framing of laws as well as implementation of laws. So we will see those things in the later part of this lecture. Moving ahead to Tuesday, the session was taken by Gaurav sir. For the from the preliminary standpoint, we took the issue with respect to, first one was location based, second one was with respect to the news that appeared in the newspaper back then, that multivitamins having a regular supply or regular intake of multivitamins may reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease. Then there was an issue with respect to RoDTEP scheme. Again, this was in news in the context of visit of WTO officials to India. And then the last one was with respect to Kumki elephants. Will not be able to cover all the news, but we will cover the important aspect of the news. So what are Kumki elephants? Because this is basically the kind of, these are native Indian elephants who are trained to act as rescue elephants and support animals to other elephants. So this is nothing but a same species of elephants which are trained. So in local language they are called as Kumki elephant. Then from the mains point of view, we took the issues of disaster management that is with the specific reference to drought, and one nation one election, issue of one nation one election. Let us try to add some value to our understanding. Moving on, the first one was with respect to key locations or key point. The issue at hand was Baltic Sea, right? So what let us again have a recap over the concept or map locations of Baltic Sea. What was the context of the news? That there is a fuel terminal by the name of Novatek, that is Russian, right? There is a Russian fuel terminal by the name of Novatek which was attacked by Ukrainian drone. So this terminal was since located in the Baltic Sea. We took up the location of Baltic Sea, and will try to again have a recap over the key locations that are in the near proximity of Baltic Sea. So what are the key points to remember? First one being that it is an extended arm of Atlantic Ocean. And then second, the countries to remember, let us go clockwise. The first country is Finland. Okay, cut. Second country is Russia. Russia done. Third country is Estonia. Again, Estonia is done. Then Latvia. Latvia done. Lithuania. Lithuania done. Poland. Poland is done. Then we come to Netherlands. Sorry, Netherlands is not part of Baltic Sea. Then Sweden. Sorry, Denmark. That is Netherlands. And then last is Sweden. How many countries do we count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Total 9 countries. And not just these, but key point to remember is that Russia borders Baltic Sea and Ukraine does not border Baltic Sea. Some other key locations that are significant when it comes to the location of Baltic Sea is that Gulf of Bothnia is located over here, Gulf of Finland is located over here, Gulf of Riga. Riga is capital of Latvia. So by the name, by the very name and location, it is named as Gulf of Riga. And then Gulf of Dansk. Again, Dansk is a name of a port city in Poland, right? So these are the 4 gulfs located in Baltic Sea. We also discussed that what are the key. Why is it so that the water of North Sea is warmer than the water of Baltic Sea? So to understand again this concept, you can go back to the mother video and watch that video to clear our concept with respect to the difference between the temperatures of Baltic Sea and North Sea, and why is it so that North Sea is warmer than Baltic Sea. Again, one geophysical phenomena that is associated with the nearby landform is Jord formation. It is pronounced as Jord, that is, if we try to write it, we would call it JORD. F is silent. So these are beautiful pictures, landscapes which can be found in the regions of Norway, right? These are basically Jord formations. If you can see, these are the Jords. So they take up this kind of picturesque and scenic view. And not only this, they have been recognized as some of the World Heritage Sites by the UNESCO. So what is a Jord? Let us discuss about the concept of Jord. Jord is a narrow sea inlet. It is this water is not river water. This water is a sea water. That means sea has gone inside the landform, and then these have U-shaped valleys, right? If you can see, the shape of this valley is U-shaped, right? So narrow sea inlet with steep sides. The sides are vertically they are very steep sides. That is why these are called as U-shaped valleys. U-shaped valleys are supposed to have steep curves, right? These are narrow sea inlets with steep sides or cliffs, and again these are U-shaped valleys. Talking about biodiversity, these are home to various types of fish, planktons and coral reefs. So in the previous video we had already discussed, last week's video, Vaibhav Sir had covered the concept of dark reefs or deep sea coral reefs. So again, you must be able to interconnect that deep sea coral reefs are again formed in northwestern parts of Europe. So again, this concept is interlinked over here. Again, interrelated. There is again interrelated concept that is called as concept of RIA. Now, what is RIA? RIA is a funnel-shaped estuary occurring at the mouth of river formed due to submergence of lower portions of river valley. When river goes and meets to sea, let us say this is a landform, river is flowing over here. So river produces various kind of landforms. Let us say one can be a delta landform, another can be estuary landform, right? You must have heard and read about the differences between delta and estuary, and in fact this question has come in GS paper 1 a couple of years back, that what is the key difference between delta and estuary. So another concept that is that should be of interest to us is the concept of RIA. So this is an example of RIA like estuary. So what is the difference between deltas and estuary is that these are funnel shaped estuaries. Funnel means this kind of structure, right? This kind of structure occurring at the mouth of river formed due to submergence of lower portions of river valley. So when river valleys submerge because of action of ice. Now we will later on discuss about the formation of fjords also. So fjords and RIA both are formed because of submergence of valleys, and the reason behind this is the glaciating actions of ice. In the subsequent map, we can see that fjords are located at specific sections of the continents only. Right? You may notice, can we see fjords in India? No, fjords are not specific to Indian subcontinent. We cannot see fjords over here. Can we see fjords in Africa? No, we do not see fjords in Africa. Can we see fjords in the southern Europe or Mediterranean Sea? No, we do not see fjords in the Mediterranean or southern southeastern Europe. So why is it so? Have you ever wondered why is it so that fjords are located on certain places or certain locations, right? For instance, fjords are located in this part of Russia and Finland, and not Sweden. Sweden may fjords are not located. Then fjords are located in the eastern part of Canada, western part of Alaska, and certain parts of Australia and New Zealand, and again the Chile. You must have seen that these are the prominent locations. What is common between all these points is the answer to our question, that why are fjords formed in the specific parts of world. So two prominent questions which can be asked, or even if they are not asked, this must be a subject of inquiry in your mind, that why Sweden has no fjords. See, Sweden is located over here and Norway is over here. Both are neighboring states. So why is there no fjords in Sweden and fjords in Norway? And then there could be a subject of inquiry from your end, that why fjords are formed in particular areas of the world. So the answer lies in first orography, and then second being glaciation. So what is the concept behind formation of fjords? Fjords are formed by the process of glacial erosion. So this is a erosional landform. Because glacier or frozen ice is lot more heavier than water, what they do, their erosional impact is much higher than normal water. When the earth was going through the end of its ice age, Norway's close coastline was heavily glaciating. Before this thing, orography had already developed, and you must be noticing that all these parts have certain mountain ranges. If you talk about this, here we have Scandinavian ranges near to the coasts, right? If you talk about Canada, Appalachian mountains are there, right? If you talk about Alaska, Alaskan mountain ranges are there. And if you talk about Southern America, which range is over there, located over there in Southern America? Please drop down in the comment section. See, right? So because there was already mountain formation, and when in the last phase of ice age there was a onset of glaciation, right? Glaciation means melting of ice. So it led to, because of the heavy load of ice over there, erosion happened, and these kind of beautiful U-shaped valleys took shape, right? And then why is it so that Sweden does not have any fjords? Reason being, the coastline of Norway was inundated already, and then along with it, why is it so? Because Sweden's coastline had mountain ranges. Sorry, Norway's coastline had mountain ranges, whereas the coastline of Sweden was not rugged in nature, it was stable, and it was located on a plateau. So that is the reason that there are no fjords in Sweden, and there are location of fjords in Norway. And then another point is that during the last ice age, the valleys and mountains were grounded down by the weight of ice, and this has led to the last ice age led to the formation of fjords. And then you can see that is why the last ice age led to the glaciation, and glaciation happened at the end in these portions of the world, and that is the reason fjords are formed over here, right? Let us now look at another concept of Alzheimer's disease. The key takeaway points is that it is a progressive neurological disorder. All these Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are nearly related, confusing concepts, right? We'll go and see what is the key difference between these two. These two are both neurological disorders and commonly known as a kind of dementia. Dementia means a difficulty in understanding, comprehending, and responding to the external stimuli, right? What is the primary cause with respect to the formation of Alzheimer's disease? It is caused by the deposition of proteins and in around brain cells. As you can see in the diagram also, these are the brain cells, and if a kind of plaque, just like if you don't brush your teeth for a couple of days, plaque is formed on your teeth. Similarly, deposition of proteinous plaque leads to extended response time, and this leads to Alzheimer's disease. Then symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, that is the key takeaway point that was discussed by Gaurav sir, was it leads to forgetting recent events, recent conversations, and the last takeaway point is that there is no treatment as of yet when it is with respect to Alzheimer's. Now let us discuss key differences between Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. The first key difference is with respect to the primary symptoms, that is in Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Parkinson's both are a type of dementia, generally speaking or generically speaking. So Parkinson leads to motor symptoms. Motor symptoms means a person suffering from Parkinson's faces issues such as tremors, that is their hands shake, and then bradykinesis, that is slowness of movement, rigidity of movement, and postural instability is seen in the persons suffering from Parkinson's disease. Whereas if we talk about Alzheimer's leads to memory loss, confusion, difficulty in problem solving, basic problem solving skills get reduced, and it also leads to changing in the kind of language, or they are not able to formulate words that easily, and their words formulating faculties get impaired, so they are not able to formulate the right words, right? Then the another point of difference is pathology. It is caused because of degeneration of dopamine. See, dopamine is again a neurochemical transmitter which acts as a stimuli to our brain. Then what is the issue with respect to Alzheimer's? Alzheimer's is caused because of accumulation of abnormal protein in the brain, as seen in the previous image, right? Then onset and progression. What is the difference with respect to onset and progression? It begins with motor symptoms and may later lead to cognitive decline. See, in both aspects, as I had already cleared, that both these diseases ultimately lead to cognitive decline, right? So Parkinson's begins with motor symptoms. Motor symptoms can be tremors in hand, right? There could be slowness of movement or rigidity in movement, and then ultimately this also leads to cognitive decline. But here it progresses gradually over time. Parkinson's may you don't get to know that a person is suffering from Parkinson's. The symptoms are very slow to onset, right? Then here the cognitive decline is little bit faster, and then it generally progresses in various stages, right? For example, we see when we talk about an Alzheimer's patient, we also ask about what stage, right? So that is the reason that first is early, middle and later stages of Alzheimer's. What is the difference between the neurotransmitter? Neurotransmitter over here is deficiency of dopamine, and then the issue with Alzheimer's is that it happens because change in acetylcholine levels. So this neurotransmitter by the name of acetylcholine is responsible for our memory retention, our sharpness of brain, and so on and forth. When this neurotransmitter declines, this ultimately leads to the concept of Alzheimer's, where person immediately forgets, is not able to construct words, so on and forth, right? So treatment, obviously, because dopamine is easy to replace, then what do? We increase the dopamine therapy of the individual. And with respect to Alzheimer's, as of now, there is no cure. But the context of this news was that in the context of Alzheimer patients, if a person takes daily multivitamins, right, so that could lead to delay in the Alzheimer's. But you never know, that study might be funded by some vested interest, right? We all will will discuss the next topic. We'll only deal with it very briefly. So the key takeaway points is that Kumkis are trained elephants, right? They are not wild elephants. Those are Asiatic elephants and not African elephants, right? This is basically a local name for, nothing much to discuss here. These are basically local trained elephants known by their local name, right? Then they are trained to be used for capturing. They could be used for capturing new elephants that are wild elephants. Then they could be used for calming and herding the wild elephants, right? Now let us discuss another news or scheme with respect to WTO. So what happened? What is the context of this news? That this particular scheme, that is remission of duties and taxes on export products, RoDTEP scheme, was in news because of visit of WTO officials to India. So what is this scheme? As the name suggests, that this scheme leads to remission. Remission means basically lessening, right? Reduction of duties and taxes on export products. So earlier, this is an advanced or evolved version of a previous scheme, that is MEIS scheme. So what was the scheme? The merchandise export from India scheme. In this particular scheme, what the government of India used to do? Government of India used to subsidize the products which were going for export. Now, what was the problem with this? These kind of subsidies to exports led to the allegations from US and European markets that these kind of subsidies are distorting the trade equilibrium. And then thus we had to subsequently end this MEIS scheme. Now what did the government do for it? government came up with a change that okay, yes, we don't know, we are not able to, since we are not able to provide subsidies to these products, now what we can do is that we can remit the duties and taxes. See, on any particular component that is manufactured, what, how can we make it cheaper? First way is to provide subsidies. If the manufacturing cost is 100 and I provided subsidy, the outcome, the project, this product is the net cost comes out to be, let us say, 80, right? I am providing the subsidy of 20 bucks over it, right? Now I sell it in the European market for, let us say, 90, and my profit margin is 10. In the context of RoDTEP scheme, because these subsidies were distorting the trade, we came up with the concept of remission of duties and taxes. Now that we cannot, since we cannot give subsidies, government came up with an idea of, let us remit the taxes and duties on the export product. And now this could be done because this was legally compliant as per WTO rules. So that is the core essence of this scheme, and this scheme is again, as per the recent news in the context of which this article was taken, that since RoDTEP scheme is compliant with the WTO norms, we are going to continue with this particular scheme. Let us quickly take up the first main topic that was taken that day. The topic was with respect to droughts, right? What is the syllabus mapping? What is the syllabus mapping of this concept? Again, disaster management is part of your GS paper 3, and then again some kind of some governance aspects are also involved when we talk about the concept of disaster management. Let us discuss the key facts with respect to droughts, right? The key facts, the first key fact is that 68% of India, or the 68% of net landform in India is vulnerable to drought or drought-like situation. Again, if we take a look at the backdrop, 2023 was the hottest recorded year, right? Then another challenge with respect to this drought-like situation is that we have already reached the 1.48 degrees in the context of Paris climate deal, in which we had committed that we will make the temperature, will keep the temperature, global temperature, well below 1.5 degrees of that which was at the pre-industrial level. So we are about to breach that commitment. So that is the problem with respect to droughts. And then the last one being 1.9 billion people globally are affected by the notion or issue of drought. So we also discussed in that particular video what are the other areas. It is not just India specific disaster. Obviously disasters are transboundary have a transboundary impact. So regions of China, India, even Indonesia, Horn of Africa, Central and Western Africa, even Europe is facing severe heat waves and drought-like conditions. You must have seen a couple of months back there was a photo in the Hindu newspaper in which river Rhine of Germany was shown, which was at all-time low levels, right? And some World War II ammunitions and shells were found out in the basin of Rhine River, right? Similarly, Northern America is also being impacted by droughts. We also discussed how are droughts classified and what are the concepts associated with droughts. So obviously, the first one is being meteorological drought, that refers to an extended period of dry weather pattern, right? So there are 5 kind of droughts that are being classified in context of India. Second one being, and then all these are like one after the other, we can place all these kind of droughts. So first one being meteorological. Similarly, when we add hydrological conditions to the meteorological drought, it becomes hydrological drought. It refers to the drought in which low water supply in our rivers and lakes and aquifers. So when meteorological drought leads to lower levels of water supply in our natural sources of water like rivers and ponds and lakes and streams, it is called as hydrological drought, because essentially there is a water deficit. Then there is agricultural drought. Agricultural drought occurs when a water shortage that is happening because of hydrological drought creates a problem with respect to the farmers, because they are not able to feed the water to their crops. Then ultimately it leads to ecological drought. Ecological drought means that overall ecosystem is affected because of the deficit of water in the environment. And lastly, drought affects us as it is a socio-economic concept. Because if drought happens, what will happen? It will lead to agricultural failure, and agricultural failure will lead to ultimately farmer and farm stress, and ultimately it could lead to farmer suicides in India, right? So what are the let us recap what are the causes of droughts in India, and then what are the impacts. So what are the causes? First one being physiography of India. Certain regions in India such as eastern or central Maharashtra, Rajasthan, even parts of Haryana and Punjab, right, central India, these have a particular kind of geography or topography because of which rain does not reach over there, right? For example, in Rajasthan, all the water carrying clouds are turned away because of the location of Aravali's, and because of this rain does not adequately fall over those parts of Rajasthan. So we cannot do much about the physiography of region. Second one being climate change, as we already discussed about the Paris agreement and the limits which are we are almost about to breach, right? Then the droughts can be with respect to changing of course of rivers, right? And why do these river changes, the usual reasons for because of which rivers have changed their course in the recent times is because of illegal sand mining and distortion in the course of rivers in the previous stages of the river, right? Then this is a natural cause with respect to the variation in rainfall. Next one being cryospheric regions. Cryospheric regions means cryosphere. What do you mean by cryosphere? Cryosphere is the region which is permafrost, which is permanently frozen. And for example, Himalayan region of India is called as third pole because it is a cryospheric region. And we see that uh, certain and most part of the Himalayas are permanently covered with ice. So what are the cryospheric region? Because of climate change, what will happen? Ice, permanently frozen ice will melt, and then once it is melting, it is not being replenished. So that leads to the drought like situations. Then unsustainable agricultural practices in states like Punjab, which are continuously using water guzzling crops like basmati rice, which are not suited for cultivation over there in the states, are being used, right? Then irrigation practices are faulty. What we are doing is that we are prominently using flood irrigation. So flood irrigation is the most unsustainable kind of irrigation practice, and it is not at all sustainable. Then deforestation, changing use patterns, that is mutation of land from forest or agri use to urban use, town planning, right? And then last one being a unique aspect of with respect to the federal governance, that is interstate water disputes. So whenever you read about interstate water dispute of Kaveri river between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, you must have read about the news that uh, Tamil Nadu again starts facing drought like situation, and there is lack of supply of water for the rice or paddy cultivation. What are the impacts? It has a cascading impact. Again, it starts with meteorology, right, and it ends at socio-economic impact, impact on groundwater, and overall impact on biome is there. Then there is a obvious economic impact, and ultimately it leads to social impact. Social impact in terms of farm distress, social unrest, social protest, and even it becomes a political agenda. Later on, we also discussed in the particular parent video about the mechanism of classification of droughts in India, and we read about certain specific problems and challenges with respect to the declaration of droughts in India. So in this context, let us see and read see for understanding the problems and issues. Again, you have to go back and watch that particular video. We'll just briefly cover the suggestions and way forward, just like Gaurav sir had covered the suggestions with respect to the NDMA guidelines for the students who have already read, who have already gone through the video and made some notes. They must be able to revise it. Yes, again, there is one humble request from you. Since the students who are very frequent in watching, who are very disciplined and frequent in watching these videos, there is one request that you should try to maintain a register of their notes, that register of the notes from the videos, right? So what you can do is that you can purchase a register and you can start watching these videos along with having a register for making your running notes. And then this session can be used for reviewing your content, and then for the sake of value addition to your content, right? So that will be again a practice, and then again it will provide you a revision and then value addition as well. So some other recommendations, see, these recommendations you will not be able to understand if you have not gone through the video in which Gaurav sir had told about the problems that the droughts are facing, right? So what are the other recommendations apart from these recommendations is that there should be a strategy for the people to pursue ecosystem compatible livelihoods, right? For example, we discussed that in Punjab, the region of Punjab is not designed or not meant for the paddy cultivation, right? So what will happen? Paddy is a water guzzler, and because it is a water guzzler, it becomes unsustainable for the ecosystem to sustain water, right? So what we can do is that we can provide a strategy for people for ecosystem compatible livelihoods. And if you are able to recollect and establish a backward connection, in the last recap DNS we had already taken the issue of millets. So millets are considered as friend of farmer, and then they are most climate friendly crops. So millets should be encouraged instead of water guzzling crops. Then again, we need to make, the government of India needs to make conventional agriculture more sustainable in the terms of reduced use of fertilizers, reduced use of power, reduced use of water, so on and forth. Then next is depoliticization of droughts, because droughts, again, what is the issue? Because droughts are not declared at the early stages. That is why a cascading impact happens, and at later stage it becomes out of hand of the administration. Why the government hesitates in declaring the droughts at the first instance? The reason being that opposition might perhaps use it for the political gains and so on and forth. So situations like drought are very sensitive, and these are not always in the hands of the humankind. So these kind of situations should not be seen from a political angle, and there should be depoliticization of droughts, right? Then There is a change in declaration criteria such as percentage and time. So we had already discussed in the video that declaration, there is a usually a delay in declaration. Why? Because State Disaster Management Authority tries to delay the declaration because of its political impact that it could have. So there should be a declaration, there should be a change in the declaration criteria. For example, there is a delay of, let us say, 20 days in the arrival of monsoon. It could be that this criteria, right? For instance, it could be a criteria of deficit, that rainfall is deficit by these particular numbers, right? So these kind of criteria need to be changed, and again they should need to be made state specific for the declaration of drought. Then again, last recommendation is that Ministry of Science and Technology can be incorporated for detecting early onset of droughts. So these are the recommendations which are in addition to what the most expansionist kind of recommendations that we had already covered in the videos. Next issue was undertaken that day was with respect to one nation, one election. What is the syllabus mapping of this issue? The syllabus mapping is with respect to the issues arising out of the federal structure of the country. Then what was the context? What is the context? The context is that a committee has been recently formed under the leadership of under the chairmanship of ex-president of India Shri Ramnath Kovind, to look into the feasibility of conducting simultaneous elections in India. So we in that particular video already discussed about the merits, that is suggestions in favor of simultaneous elections, and then again we discussed about the challenges that could come with respect to simultaneous elections in India. Along with this, we will just have a recap and value addition to these points. That first one being, what are the challenges? Obviously the obvious merits are with respect to increasing administrative efficiencies, saving precious time, right? So on and forth. So what could be the challenges that committee should look into, and what are the suggestions or way forward that it should emerge with if we want to take up simultaneous elections? The first one being, what are the issues of the issue could be that the voter could be confused, right? In India, why do we follow the first past the post system, right? It is because of lack of political or basic academic or educational literacy in India. So the issue could be that again a phenomena in India is emerging, that we are not voting in the name of, let us say, political party. We are voting in the name of, let us say, persons. So in this kind of socio-economic environment where a voter is not that educated very well, so this could lead to further confusion, that what kind of polling that I'm going for, is it assembly elections or is it Lok Sabha elections? Then there can be issues with respect to the manpower. Again, ECI is a constitutional body, but unlike CAG, which has its dedicated cadre, ECI does not have a dedicated cadre, and it is dependent on the state machinery for the free and fair conduct of elections, and these are assisted again by the paramilitary forces. So conducting one nation, one election is going to be a huge logistical exercise. Again, an argument can be given that India follows a pluralist model of democracy in which there is an existence of multi-party, right? So it again goes against the spirit, and obviously in these kind of big games, it will lead to again either a one party system, or it would lead to two party system, and smaller parties are bound to lose in the race with the mammoths, right? Giants. Anti-federal. It could diminish the focus of local issues and weaken federal character. See, while polling for Vidhan Sabha elections, that is state legislative elections, people obviously vote for local issues, that let us say urban governance of my city is not correct, right? Let us say issues of local importance, or let us say development of pond or development of basic schools. These are the primary focus areas when we vote for the assembly elections, right? Sorry, Vidhan Sabha elections. But when we vote for parliamentary elections, the issues range from, let us say, it could be foreign policy. For an educated voter, the issue could be overall macroeconomic standards of economy. Issue could be foreign policy. Issue could be with respect to the defense preparedness of the nation, so on and forth. Issue could be India's international relations, right? So here local issues mix with international issues, and then the party in power could gain advantage obviously over the local parties, because local party has got no say in the relations that India has with respect to USA. But the party in power or bigger parties can play that card, that in our regime improve relationships with, let us say, so and so country improved. In our regime, let us say, improvement with respect to India's UN standing improved, right? So local parties or regional parties are obviously going to be at the backstage, backfoot. Then there should be a consensus among political parties, which right now lacks. Other challenges include infrastructural challenges, as we have already discussed about the logistical challenges, right? Strain on logistical arrangements, not just in the context of paramilitary forces, but also in the context of EVMs and the ancillary staff that is used by the Election Commission of India. Then there are regional variations, and then regional variations means diversity in the needs of the local people, of the needs of indigenous communities, so on and forth, the demands and aspirations of the most remotest states or districts or regions, sub-regions, and then these will not be respected, right? These are just the allegations that these may not be respected when it comes to simultaneous elections. Then there could be issues with respect to campaign financing. Obviously, when the game gets bigger, they'll obviously try to political candidates are obviously going to ask for increase in the limits. And obviously in India we are suffering from the issues of black money and involvement of black money and issue of unclean elections. So this could be an issue. Another issue could be legal challenge. Amendments would be required in Article 83 of the Constitution, 85, that are with respect to the state assemblies, right? Time period and prorogation of assemblies and Representation of People Act 1950 will need to be parallelly amended. Then there are issues with respect to, again this is linked with infrastructural issue, that electoral integrity could be compromised. In this context, let us see certain way forwards. What is the way forward? First being staggered elections. Staggered election means some states polls could be could be held with respect to close to Lok Sabha polls and midterms. Others could be held with respect to in the nearness to general elections. Then cost control through enforcing candidate spending limits, right? 1 year 1 election plan could be another option, that you could go for, in one particular year you could go for one election and then you can club certain states. But again, it is not very practical, and this kind of mechanism is already happening in India, so that will create further challenges without giving substantial returns. Then this could be an alternative of constructive no confidence motion, that a party can bring in no confidence motion only when they have the support to form the government on the floor. This kind of exercise is carried out in Germany. It's called as constructive no confidence. It means that a party should not bring in no confidence motion unless it has the numbers to form the government on the floor. Moving on to Wednesday, the session was taken by Pooja ma'am. So in the context of preliminary examination, we took up the issue of Bharat Ratna, Vaibhav Fellowship, Coalition of Epidemic Preparedness and Innovation, and from the mains point of view, we took up the issues of solar energy and domestic support in agriculture. Let us begin our inquiry one by one. We dealt with the factual metrics of Bharat Ratna awards back that day. So, what was the context of the news? Bharat Ratna is going to be awarded to ex-Bihar Chief Minister Shri Karpuri Thakur, right? So, he was a socialist leader of Bihar. What are the key takeaway points? He came from a traditional, see, factual metrics of Bharat Ratna, who has got Bharat Ratna, what is the criteria, whether foreigners have got Bharat Ratna or not, they have already been covered. We are not again going to repeat the same things. We are going to add some value to the already existing base. So that is why again I am requesting you once again that it is again necessary to watch regularly. This is again a kind of it is not a replacement but a supplement to the existing knowledge. The base we have created from the videos, and this is just a superstructure. How, to what extent can be covered in 2.5 to 3 hours video? Obviously you have to watch, you have to be persistent, right, in watching the videos, right? So the factual matrix of with respect to Shri Kapuri Thakur, and I'll tell you why I have chosen to tell you these things, because in the lecture it was taken up from the standpoint of Bharat Ratna. So he came from a traditional Nai community, basically barbers, and he was from the OBC background. He was known for his humble background, down to earth living, and probity and dedication to public service. And then another factual value addition is that are these awards like Bharat Ratna considered as title under the ambit of Article 18? No. So in the Balaji Raghavan case, it was already decided that these awards are not titles. The titles were conferred by the Britishers. Let us say, for example, Rai Bahadur, right? So these kind of titles were knighthood was given by the Britishers. So these awards are just recognition by the government for the service that you have provided, the individual has provided. These do not provide any kind of special treatments to the individuals, and it was cleared in the Balaji Raghavan case that these awards should not be considered as title under the ambit of Article 18. Now let us, because he was a socialist leader, let us have a brief understanding about socialism or Samajwad. The word comes from the Latin word sociare, that means to share. So it is a socio-political doctrine. Again, socio-political means it has a political impact as well. First it has a social impact, and then again it has a political impact, which believe in the society should be organized in a way that everyone is equal, right? And then again, everyone has got an equal say in the decision making, and people should be able to enjoy the fruits of their labor. It developed as a counter argument to rising materialism, utilitarianism, and individualism in the Europe in the 18th century. Now, why we have taken the life sketch of Sri Karpuri Thakur? Take up your pen and paper and note down these examples. What is the syllabus mapping for this thing? Unit 1, GS paper 4, that is ethics, integrity and aptitude, says that lessons from life of great leaders, reformers and administrators act as examples, first to live by, and then second to implement, right? So since Shri Karpuri Thakur has received Bharat Ratna award, we can draw certain examples from his life. So first example is with respect to his value of integrity. For example, even Prime Minister Narendra Modi quoted that instance from his life where a colony was about to be built for political leaders in the headquarters or the capital city of Bihar, Patna. But he did not take part, or he did not allocate for himself any land out of it, right? So this is an example of integrity. Then humbleness. His parents continued to live and perform his own traditional tasks, right? Even after he became the chief minister of a state twice, and they used to live in kacha houses or jhopdis, right? Then honesty and humility. An instance from the life of Sri Karpuri Thakur that was quoted in one of the newspapers, that he received certain donations because he used to live in such a humble way, right? For example, just like he had the values of Quit India movement and working under Gandhiji, and because Gandhiji had even quit his clothes, so he was also inspired by the great leaders such as Gandhiji. And he used to wear torn kurtas basically, and when he got money for or donation for purchasing new clothes, he donated that money to chief minister's relief fund. So does his personality strike some resemblance with the personality of other leaders such as Gandhiji? He walked on the footsteps of Gandhiji. And again, this discussion shows, do you remember a great American president by the name of Abraham Lincoln? He was never ashamed of his heritage. He came from a cobbler's family. His father used to make shoes, right? So as an incident goes, that once he was in the American Senate, and one of the opposition member, he called that you come from a cobbler community, so on and forth. And then he humbly replied, yes, I come from a cobbler community, and one day I'd like to have you the pleasure of making a shoe for even you, right? So this was his humbleness. And similarly, even when he used to, Sri Karpuri Thakur, when he used to attend social functions and so on, he never shied away from performing his traditional function, and with same precision and diligence he performed the political actions as well. Then he had strong adherence to the principles of social justice and social reforms and improving the lives of the marginalized. And it was under his regime that Mungeri Lal Commission was set up to classify OBCs into ECBs and OBCs. EBCs means extremely backward classes, right? Moving on, let us discuss about the Vaibhav scheme. So the Vaibhav scheme is an acronym for Vaishvik Bhartiya Vigyan Vaigyanik Scheme. Sorry, what are the key takeaways from that scheme? The key takeaways is that it aims to provide research ecosystem for the aspiring scientists in India. What is the essence of this scheme? That people of Indian origin or NRIs who have migrated to other developed countries, right, in the field of science, research, and so on, they can come back to India, work for a month or two in the premier institutions of India, and provide a kind of aid and assistance to the research that is happening in India. So what are the key takeaways? The scheme is aimed at improving the research ecosystem in India. The time period would be 1 to 2 months for a maximum period of 3 years. That means a scientist that is working in, let us say, Caltech will come to India. He must be a Indian origin scientist. The similar scheme by the name of Vajra exists for international or foreign scientists who can come to India, do their research, and then go back, right? Okay. So they can come here for 1 to 2 months maximum in a year, and then the scheme is cumulatively applicable for next for 3 years. That means max to max a scientist can contribute 6 months of their research and share the results and best working methods with the Indian PhD scholars. Then the stipend would be 37 lakhs. The aims are further for genuine transfer of knowledge and work culture. Most important thing is that we lack kind of disciplined work culture in Indian universities and academic institutions. Then improved supervision of, it would lead to improved supervision of Indian PhD students, and then the ultimate aim is to retain them in India. If you have watched a very famous and good movie by the name of Swades, right, in this movie Shah Rukh Khan is one of the engineers with NASA. He comes back to India and then he finds a reason to stay back in India. Right. So let us discuss a couple of challenges with respect to these schemes, in part this scheme in particular, and overall the status and issues and challenges faced by the academia or academic research in general in India. So the first point being, research in India is mostly secondary. What is the meaning of secondary research and primary research? For example, primary research means, let us say I take up an idea, I develop that idea, and based on that idea I conduct my own research, I devise my own methodologies, not just my own methodologies, basically I have to discipline myself in the context of the existing methodologies, but I define the contours of my research and then I come out with a outcome. What is the problem with Indian researchers is that they take up that primary research and build upon that primary research. So that is the problem with Indian research, that we do not come up with innovative and creative primary researches. So obviously this scheme in general will further contribute only to secondary researches in India. Let us say a professor from, let us say, MIT comes to India, or Harvard or John Hopkins comes to India. Is he going to induce a primary research in India? No, obviously he would like to take the credit of primary research on his own name, right? And he, at the max, what he can do, he can provide the ideas that he had already exhausted 3 to 4 years back, and then he can tell the aspiring PhDs that you work on this idea, how to take this idea forward, or he is going to ask for the problems that he could not solve, right? He'll not be able to, that person will not be able to provide them with innovative and creative thinking. Then there could be an issue of conflict of interest. Obviously any institution which is there, which is paying you, would not like you to share that research with the other country or other institution or so on and forth, and though this is going to be an issue of conflict of interest. Then limited time period. So see, researches takes years, maybe perhaps some great researches takes not just years but decades. What is going to happen in 1 or 2 months? At best we can, what the young students can learn is about the work culture and efficiency and the way of thinking of that particular scientist or researcher. They cannot do substantive research, any substantive research worth its name, in 1 or 2 months, right? Then there is a competition of tenured, this point was taken directly from the Hindu newspaper, that there is a existing competition with respect to tenured jobs. What is the meaning of tenured jobs? Tenured job means when a professor gets tenured, not unlike India, professors join the institutions in USA based on their skills and academic capability, but they are retained only when they have contributed substantially to the institution. So retainment for the lifetime is called as tenured job in USA, right? So there is an cutthroat competition for tenured jobs in top class universities in USA and EU. So why is it is difficult to imagine why would a scientist like to come here in India, invest his 2 months and then go back and start from scratch when he is eyeing for a tenured job in USA, right? Then there are issues with respect to the structural problems in India, that again primary or basic research in India lacks funding. Obviously secondary researches are coming up in India, but because primary research in itself is not coming, so what would a scientist do? Because the base itself is hollow, so whatever I apply to the superstructure is not going to give me a solid foundation. Then there is lack of participation from private sector in research. Most of the research in the Western or developed countries is carried out with the help of private sector individuals, which is not the case in India. In India, the research is carried out with the help of state funding, and private sector academia linkage is very poor, right? This leads us to the next point, that because state is the primary funding authority or funding power or funding authority for the research is tied to academic, the issue is tied to academic freedom. Since the researches are tied to the government, so what would government do? It would limit the academic freedom to the demands which a bureaucrat sitting in Delhi must have imagined, that this is the course of action that the research should take. He is not so much acquainted with the kind of researches that must be going on in the top labs of the world, but whatever he is guided by his limited vision, he would like to implement that vision only. So that is going to be the lack point with respect to the limited academic freedom. Then there is an issue with respect to trigger change in policy. What if the government changes and subsequent government change leads to the change in policy? And then lastly, it is based on a huge presumption that a person or a scientist named Mohan will come. He will again find a purpose. He will see the issues that India is facing. He'll find a purpose, and then he will ultimately stay in India. So this is a presumption, but another part of this presumption is that he has got a life over there. He has got a tenure to look for in the particular country, and so he might not be that much incentivized with respect to staying back in India. So these are the challenges with respect to these schemes, right? Then the next issue was with respect to the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness and Innovation. The key takeaway points are: this is CEPI initiative. Another key initiative that was in news in the past couple of years was Gavi Alliance, Global Alliance for Vaccinization and Immunization. What are the key takeaway points? Key takeaway points are an alliance for public, private, civil society and philanthropic organizations. So the three primary stakeholders are PP, public and private, then that is society, civil, and then philanthropy organization. So again, just now we discussed about the importance and significance of civil society a couple of slides back. So again, you see the interlinkage, everything is interlinked, right? So society or civil society organizations are again important when it comes to epidemic preparedness and innovation with respect to medicine. What is the purpose? Purpose is that we were caught off guard when COVID-19 came. So there was no policy, there were no precedents, so on and forth, and it costed us unnecessary delays with respect to implementation. We had no plan basically, right? So this alliance was formulated or launched in Davos, and its mandate has now been further strengthened for better collection and sharing of funds, and it has got a 100 days vision. It has got a 100 days vision, and 100 days vision is with respect to improved surveillance of epidemics, detection and warning, early detection and warning, because this the issue of COVID-19 and its emergence from China. So there was a lot of fog or kind of less clarity when it came to the origins and so on. So there is it will lead to early detection and warning, then swift interventions with respect to contact tracing and enhanced testing. This all would be done in a span of less than 100 days, so that in the next any kind of epidemic comes, we are little bit prepared for it. The next issue that was taken up was with respect to the tax to GDP ratio. Now the news in the context was with respect to tax to GDP ratio, that we have accumulated, or we have grossed highest tax to GDP ratio. And then again the additional part of the news that was that the cost of collection is down, as it is evident from both of these slides, right? Let me change the color. So tax to GDP ratio is highest at 6.11%, and then cost of collection is down at least at 0.51%. Let us briefly discuss, before discussing, let us understand the concept of tax to GDP ratio. So tax to GDP ratio is a measure of countries' tax revenue, the size of economy as a measure of GDP. So it is a ratio of tax revenue upon size of economy, which will be calculated in terms of GDP. Tax, basically tax upon GDP, is the concept of tax to GDP ratio. What are the advantages when it comes to the good tax to GDP ratio? Are indicate it is first an indicator of economic growth, right? It shows that economy is growing at a robust pace. Then improved tax compliance and better financial intelligence. Obviously, when you have an improved tax compliance and better financial intelligence and good tax administration, it is going to improve the tax to GDP ratio. Third advantage is that it leads to reduced dependence on debt. See, if government has got its fair share of due, government would never like to go for debt raising and borrowing for its usual expenditures. Then another aspect is that when government will have a huge sum of money for expenditure, government is again obviously going to spend on various issues, various sectors like education and health, so on and forth, which would lead to better social welfare of the marginalized communities. Again, better tax to GDP ratio leads to improved investor confidence. A investor obviously goes on and to see that what kind of health the economy is in, and improved tax to GDP ratio is an indicator of good economic health. And then the projection for India is that, or our personal goal of the government of India is that by 2030 we must have a ratio of 30%. Right now, how is it? How much is it? 6.11%. So 6 years may we have to reach from 6.11% to 30%. That is our aspiration. But one aspect, one noteworthy aspect is that since the cost of collection is reduced substantially, that is once from 0.66% to 0.51%. So this is an indicator of better tax administration in India. So obviously we have read and understood about the concept of tax and GDP ratio. You must all be elated to learn this thing. How is it all good, or are there any limitations? So let us discuss about the limitations. So what is the limitation of this method? Is it all good, hunky and dory, without any issues or problems? So lo and behold, these are the problems that are there with respect to only relying and cheering after reading the news of improved tax to GDP ratio. So what are the issues? The first one is, obviously this is not a very strong argument, but one can obviously argue that higher taxes can overburden the taxpayer and discourage investment. So obviously tax to GDP ratio is increasing, the component of taxation is obviously increasing, and the problem is not with respect to taxation. The problem is with respect to the slabs of taxation in are which are disproportionately biased in the favor of certain income ranges, right? Then there is a heavy reliance on indirect taxes. So indirect taxes have an equal incidence even if it comes to a pauper or a prince. So heavy, because we have heavy reliance on indirect taxes, and direct tax collection is again not that substantial. We'll see further. So that is the reason that this should not be a news for that much again uh, appreciation or happiness. Third point being, the drivers of GDP in India is consumption led growth. Ideally, what should happen? Tax should come, revenue should come, but the revenue that which would be good, which would be favorable, the kind of revenue which is coming from taxation, uh, for which taxation for which the direct outcome of which is exports, right? That kind of tax amounts to substantial national growth. But here the structural issue with our economy is that we are a consumption driven economy, so these figures don't amount to that much advantage. Next is complex GST structure. This is a self-explanatory point. Then another point that is linked to this is that we have a narrow tax base, that is only 6.75 crore individuals are direct taxpayers. Otherwise, all other taxation is coming from indirect taxes, which for which everyone pays equally. Higher tax to GDP ratio could be, higher collection of taxes could be a reason of other externalities like inflation, and then it may not project regional diversity in the tax collection. This could not reflect what are the pertinent issues with respect to regional diversity. And again, because it is factually 6.11%, and now it is our aspiration in the next 6 years to take it to up to 30%. So what is the OECD average? OECD average is 34%, and other emerging economies this average is 21% already. So we are again a lot far behind when it comes to the race. Perhaps the most pertaining and pertinent and relevant argument is Wagner's law in this context. What does Wagner's law say? So Wagner's law is a law in economics which says that public expenditure, with the increase in public expenditure, with the increase in public expenditure, public expenditure increases with increase in national income. So when our national income is increased, it naturally leads to increased public expenditure. So what should happen? Because our tax to GDP ratio is increasing, that means our taxation capabilities are increasing, that means we are getting more and more taxes, right? So it should naturally lead to what? It should naturally lead to increased public expenditure. Now I would not discount that public expenditure is not happening at all. We are investing heavily in infra, road, rails, bridges, and other capital expenditure. In fact, we had covered one of this topic in the previous DNS, that India is aspiring for enhanced capex push, if you would remember. But let us take a leaf from the economic survey that the indicators of social development, right, like education, health, and others, the investment on these indicators have stagnated over the years. So I would not say that this is not a matter of pride or cheer, but again there should be a cautionary, it is an optimistic thing, but the optimism should be cautionary, that the distribution of taxation should be such that it not only creates infrastructure but also should create and improve the social infrastructure of the country. Moving on, the next aspect that was covered with respect to our mains preparation was solar rooftops. The key data that was provided in that particular video was with respect to what are the solar hotspots in India. So let us discuss. The first one being the contiguous region of Punjab, Haryana and Jammu Kashmir. The biggest hotspot is with respect to the state of Rajasthan and Gujarat. Then Maharashtra and MP are again hotspots with respect to the solar rooftop. The context of this news was Pradhan Mantri Pradhan Mantri scheme for solar rooftops that was launched recently. The details of this scheme are not with us. So that was the context of this news. And then we also discussed the details about the India's energy matrix or energy mix, and we also discussed about the INDCs that were available, that are there for us to look up to. Then let us discuss in this context what are the merits and then challenges with respect to the particular scheme. Merit, first let us discuss merit. The merits being that it is solar energy. The merit is that it is renewable and sustainable in nature. Second would be reduced pollution. Then third is energy security and self-reliance, because we import not just oil but also coal, and this leads to the deficit because dollars flow out of the country for procurement of oil and coal. So it will lead to not just energy security, Atmanirbharta in the area of energy security, it would also lead to reduced trade deficit with various countries such as, let us say, Australia, right? Off-grid electrification would be there, and again any kind of industry when it originates, it creates kind of various primary jobs, secondary jobs and ancillary jobs associated with that particular industry. So these are the merits. So what are the challenges that are going to be there in the implementation? That solar projects are profitable only at the economies of scale level. So because this scheme would obviously lead to natural production and manufacturing of solar panels in India. So unless a company receives substantial number of orders and economy of scale cannot be replicated, so unless that can be done, so these projects would not be profitable. Then installation costs are they range from nearly 1 lakh to 2 lakh rupees. If we talk about this scheme, the primary beneficiary is going to be the poor or lower middle class person. Does he have the capability or viability to invest 2 lakhs on their house uh, for the installation of solar power panels? That is debatable. Then manufacturing capacity and associated infrastructure is lacking in the country. Again, I would request that those who have seen that particular day's DNS, they would already be ready with the factual metrics, that what is the manufacturing capacity and all we had already discussed in the parent video. Then import dependency on China is another factor. Why? Because generally what our manufacturers do, they are not truly the manufacturers, because for manufacturing a back end chain is required, right? Manufacturing does not begin with production of solar panels, it ends with the production of solar panel. The back end supply chain is required, from silicon to assembly to refining to producing chips and then panels. That is the series, right? So because we do not have the back end connectivity with respect to the production, what usually Indian manufacturers do, they get them manufactured from China, they just label their name and sell it by the Make in India project. So that is the problem with respect to the import dependency on China. Another problem is with respect to structural inadequacy of roofs, especially with reference to housing in rural localities, right? So rural localities में the houses are not built to sustain the various the roofs are not built to sustain the weight of solar panels. And then again, we have not incorporated this kind of vision in Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana urban or Gramin, that we should have anticipated that this kind of thing could be there in future. So proper strengthening or better variety, better quality of roofs should be built from the future, so that they could sustain the weight. And again, proper reinforcement of the roofs would be required at the lower level, rural level. Then another issue with respect to urban areas is that because urbanization means vertical proliferation of city, right? Urbanization ultimately leads to vertical proliferation of cities. You tell me, people living in urban areas, how much square footage of space that do you have? If you would like to install a solar power panel, can you install it at individual places? I highly doubt that. Then there are issues with respect to solar waste and pollution, from the process of manufacturing to the process of installation, to the stage of packaging, and ultimately to the solar waste disposal mechanism. So these are the challenges for which India should be prepared if we are about to eye for these kind of things. Next issue was again India. This week there were three issues. First one was with respect to coming on an agreement. Second second one was with respect to RoDTEP scheme, and then the third one was taken in the context of farm subsidies, which is there in our GS paper 3. And then there are issues, contiguous issues of poverty and hunger and international institutions in our GS paper 2, which are required to be read in the context of for the context of which this WTO is important. What was the immediate context of the news? That 13th ministerial conference is the apex meeting of WTO members. So 13th ministerial conference of WTO is about to happen at Abu Dhabi. So we, in that particular video, we discussed about the key issues when it comes to India's apprehensions or concerns when it comes to WTO. We also covered the concept of green box subsidies, that are good to go subsidies which are allowed as per the WTO agreement. Then we discussed about blue box subsidies, which are the subsidies in terms which are also allowed, but they are specific to the nature of particular country. These subsidies are not available for every country. And then we discussed about the concept of amber box subsidy. These kind of subsidies are considered as trade distortionary subsidies. So these kind of subsidies are discouraged by WTO. Let us discuss about the key facts, why India and WTO have locked horns. So the story begins. The immediate context is National Food Security Act of 2013. The government came up with National Food Security Act because why? It was an issue related to poverty and hunger in India, right? So in the government of India, to curb the issue of poverty and hunger, came up with NFSA 2013, by which government got bound by law to provide food security. The criteria was that we will ensure food security first for 75% of the rural population, and 50% of the urban population. Intended purpose was first to provide food security and end hunger and pestilence in all its forms. Then second one was farmer welfare. What are the pertinent schemes in this context? Antyodaya Anna Yojana and Priority Household Scheme for distribution of food. Then how does WTO come in picture? WTO comes in picture because in 1995 Marrakesh Agreement, there was an agreement on agriculture. The intended purpose of this particular act was to reform trade in agricultural practices in India. Because what does WTO stand for? WTO stands for free trade. Free trade cannot happen if there is a concept of distortion. If a particular country is giving subsidies to the farmers for production of certain particular crops, right? So that would lead to ultimately the distortion of free trade. Now, what was happening since, and another purpose was to reduce agricultural subsidies as a disciplinary mechanism. So what is the key issue? Since India again, we use minimum support price mechanism for mandatory for procurement of essential food stocks, right? The purpose of that is first to ensure food security, and then second, that particular thing could be exported. Now, since the input is heavily subsidized in the form of minimum support price mechanism that is provided by India, so other countries in the world come to WTO and argue that since India is giving subsidy to its farmers first at the instance of cropping, but then let it go, because it would fall under what? It would fall under blue box subsidy, or either it would fall under green box subsidy. But the subsidies in the form of minimum support price that is ensured for the unlimited amount of procurement of wheat and rice, that would fall under amber box subsidy. So when government procures and provides them MSP, its price is distorted, and then when government exports from that particular quota, it distorts the international trade. So that is the essence. And the article in this context was written by an economist who suggested that for the time being, India should provide a kind of olive leaf to WTO, and India should stop exporting rice and wheat from the reserve quota, because that is being procured by ensuring the minimum support price. The key issues and concerns with respect to our WTO tussle are first to provide, they are concerned and skeptical about the provisions of PDS under an FSA. Then there are the second, with respect to this, there are issues with respect to buffer stock maintenance, and this buffer stock is one of the key issue when it comes from the standpoint of WTO, because India has in the past exported the rice and wheat from this buffer stock. Then again, another issue is with respect to base year, change of base year. See, subsidy can be given as a percentage of, as a certain percentage of our economy. So developed countries had established 5% and 10% as subsidies, but the base year was 1986 to 88. Now Indian economy has substantially grown from the periods of 1986 to 88, and now Indian economy is substantially larger than what it used to be at the 1986 and 88 level. So that is the point of conflict when it comes from the standpoint of India. And the last one is, so we had achieved a kind of peace clause which has ensured a status quo ante until a mutually agreeable position is reached on this matter. So as of now, there is no solution. There might be a solution in future, but as per our discussion on the primary topic that was taken by Vaibhav Sir, it does not appear that even this year there would be a solution. But this particular article argued that as an extension of olive branch, we could stop exporting from the buffer stock maintenance, so that it would not be trade distortionary in its outcome. The Thursday's article were taken by Vidushi ma'am. The primary for preliminary examination point of view, 4 important topics were taken. First one was coal gasification, second one being variable repo rate, third one being Jal Jeevan Mission, and fourth one being Operation Shakti. These two are very factual in nature, so I have skipped these ones and I have discussed only these two. Then from the mains standpoint, we had discussed farmer producer organization and free movement regime, that is India Myanmar relations. Let us, without further delay, let us discuss key facts with respect to coal gasification. What is the context? The center has approved a higher financial outlay of 8,500 crores for coal gasification. What is gasification? Coal gasification refers to a process in which coal is converted to combustible matter. From combustible matter, coal is converted to combustible gases. Combustible gases are hydrogen, carbon monoxide, and methane, CH4. Right. So the scheme has got 3 components. First component is for PSUs, in which they can install projects up to 4050 crores, that is 4050 crores. Second one is the mechanism in which even private sector or PSUs can establish coal gasification plants. The outlay for that is 3850 crores, 3850 crores. And then the third category is demonstration projects, in which a private sector player or a PSU can come up and demonstrate a new or emerging technology in the field of coal gasification, the outlay for which is 600 crores. The ultimate aim of this scheme is to achieve gasification of 100 million tons by 2030. Right. What are the other associated concepts with respect to coal gas? First one being producer gas. When coal is burnt with incomplete oxygen supply, it leads to the formation of producer gas. And synthetic gas or syngas, when coal is burnt with steam, that is heated water obviously, so it again leads to the formation of synthetic gas. The next aspect was with respect to Jal Jeevan Mission. What is the aim of Jal Jeevan Mission? To provide functional tap water connection to each household by 2024, which is the current year. So you need to keep tap on this particular mission, not just because it is important for the point of view of preliminary or mains, but also as an appraisal of what our governments are doing for us, right? Now let us discuss, without further delay, the progresses that have been made by the Jal Jeevan Mission. The first one being most important, that it has increased the access or coverage of tapped water supply, which used to be 16% of individuals households. Right. Before the implementation of this scheme, only 16% of households in India used to have tapped water supply. The remarkable improvement here is that now more than 55% of the people in India have tapped water supply when it comes to their homes. The net number of people is 108 million households have a provision for tapped water in India now, which is a substantial and commendable move. Then the Jal Jeevan Mission leads to participatory water governance. The scheme is based on principles of decentralization. It is demand driven. Obviously, person will come and say that I do not have a tapped water connection in my home, and then government will oblige by giving him a tapped water connection, and then community managed. We will further see how it is community managed. Another most important component with respect to this scheme is gender empowerment, which we usually ignore. See, both carrying of water and the sanitation aspect, when it comes to water, the burden lies on whom? The women folks of the household. You must have seen pictures from Rajasthan, remote districts of Rajasthan, in which women go to miles in the morning just to collect a pot or two of the water. So this leads to increased gender gaps. See, a young boy would go to obviously classrooms, and the girl will have to go along with her mother to fetch 2 pots of water. So this is the kind of unfortunate situation which is prevalent in the states of maybe Rajasthan, areas of Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh. So this scheme would lead to first plugging gender gaps. The girl child of the household will also go to school and conduct her studies. And then another component why is it important is that the issue of sanitation of rural women and also urban women revolves around the issues of sanitations and clean toilets. So the sanitation committees made up at the village level have 50%, at least 50% participation of women. So this would obviously naturally lead to Swachh Bharat Abhiyan and cleanliness component and ownership of the assets. Then again, another issue with respect to, or advantage with respect to this scheme is that it would lead to reduced social stratification. You must have heard, if you have read our constitution keenly, that Article 15 says that there should be no prohibition on the basis of religion, race, caste, or place of birth. Why was there a need to mention in the subclause why was there a need to mention that no person shall be restricted from usage of wells, tanks and bathing ghats? It is amusing to see these kind of things to be mentioned in the Constitution of India. But why was it written? Because this is one of the social realities of India. Even Dr. Ambedkar had to go through this social reality, that he was once denied drinking water just because of his caste. So even today in the rural landscape, the problem is that the conventional sources of wells, conventional sources of water are still in the control of dominant castes, or let us say upper caste. So they do not like the Dalits or marginalized communities or economically backward sections, right, to go over there and visit and use the ghats for purposes of water collection or bathing or drinking, because with water there is a concept of purity and pollution linked, right? So this scheme would lead to reduced social stratification, that is traditional exclusivist caste ownership would be replaced by individual ownership of tapped water connection to every household. So these are the obvious advantages. Let us move on to the issue that was taken up for the mains examination. The context was that FPOs and SHGs are considered, that there was a news with respect to farmer producer organizations, right? So FPOs, farmer producer organizations and self-help groups are considered as twin pillars of rural development in India. What are the key benefits? Madam had already discussed various key benefits when it comes to rural development and the role of farmer producer organizations. Let us try and add some value to our understanding, right? So key advantages are collective purchasing of quality inputs, right? So when a farmer, right, for example, what is an FPO? You must have all, I hope you must have all watched that video, but let me revise your memory. These are associations formed under, let us say, even they can be registered under Societies Act, Companies Act, or Cooperative Societies Act. So these are the organizations in which farmers come together and do conduct their business together in order to gain a collective bargaining, right? So the key advantages of farmers for of this is that land is pooled and collectively they can grow a similar crop, high yield variety crop, and then they can, because the quality, the outcome would be similar for the large swaths of land, so they can collectively go and bargain with respect to these things in the market at a better rates, sorry. So key advantages are it lowers the cost of production, then they get to know about the know-hows and skills with respect to the usage of high yielding variety of seeds, advanced chemicals and fertilizers, and so on and forth. Then there is an advantage with respect to the sharing of farm machinery, then higher earnings through the collection, selling and make markets, and selling to the government agencies. Obviously, if the quality of the product is better, then it is a natural outcome that the product will sell at a better price, right? And then because the grading of the product would be similar, it would be sold at a better price in the mandis. Then it empowers the kisans to work as social and economic entrepreneurs, which are driven by the spirit of farmers welfare and community development. Then we discussed the issues and challenges associated with it. Let us add value to it. Additional challenges are lack of technical skills and awareness about the benefits of FPOs. Again, India's rural landscape, the policies formed by the governments in the headquarters, why don't they work well in the rural landscape? Why? The reason being that social reluctance at the grassroots level, right? So there is a reluctance with respect to the uptake. Why? Because rural households are sentimentally attached to the land. So whatever policies may come with respect to collectivization of farms and so on and forth, they fail to get implemented at the ground level. So what is the first point? That is lack of technical skill and awareness about the benefits of FPO. So it is again seen as a kind of with a skeptical spirit, and people do not trust them. They have an attitude that this is a new form of zamindari system. Lack of professional management. They again, FPOs as of now, the highest number of FPOs are there in which state? So one of the highest number of FPOs are there in, let us say, Maharashtra and Karnataka, but various other states lack the formation of FPOs. One of the reasons being there is a lack of professionals in this field, and because that leads to lack of professional management, and this is a pertinent issue with respect to the formation of FPOs. Then again, similar to the issues that are there with respect to self-help groups in India, they also face the issues of weak finances, inadequate access to market infrastructure, then financial constraints which are faced by also the SHGs. And then there is a issue with respect to difficulty in attracting the talent or youth towards agriculture, because agriculture does not seem to provide enough for the growing aspirations and needs of the youth. So youth is reluctant to join the agriculture as a remunerative business. Then there are issues specific to states. For example, in a research study that was conducted in Punjab, it was found out that there are vested interests who would not like farmers to join FPOs, because then they will gain collective bargaining power and better access and improved resources, right? So they would be getting better prices. So even middlemen, at some instances it was found that middlemen try to derail the process of FPOs formation so that they could gain better when sitting in the middle, right? So what is the way forward? Adding value to it. What is the way forward? That circular model, it should be followed, right? So factors like infrastructural development, market and financial accessibility, credit affordability, efficient commodity pricing mechanism need to be managed by government at equitable place. And Why is it circular model? That one impacts the other. If you implement one, you can obviously, it will have a cascading, positive cascading impact on the other, and then subsequently everything will fall in line and farmer will gain. This goes on well with the government's aspiration of doubling the farmers' income in near future. Then the next topic was with respect to the free movement regime. Right. Let us draw the syllabus mapping. Syllabus mapping with respect to GS2 is that India and neighborhood relations. And from the GS3 point of view, internal security challenges when it comes to India. We discussed the brief history of India-Myanmar relations, that how Myanmar got independence just 1 year after India, but the relationship is traced back in history. Once Myanmar was part of India, it was separated from India and made into a separate province only in 1936. So the landmark changes. So why so the present problem of free movement regime is can be traced back to that period, because once it was a part of India, various people have familial, various tribes have familial linkages cross border. So that is why there was a need to provide a free movement regime. Now over the period, because of influence of left wing extremism in that region, it has led to various issues such as narcotic activities, smuggling, transboundary terrorism, and so on and forth. And then because Myanmar in the recent past has been suffering from issues like Rohingya crisis, so on and forth. So there was felt a need that we need to secure our borders and restrict the free movement regime when it comes to the state of Myanmar. Then we also discussed in that video the need of the free movement regime and the concerns with respect to free movement regime that is there. So you can go back and watch the issues to understand the concept in detail. Right now we will focus only on the way forward. So what is the way forward in this thing? The way forward is that first there could be right now with respect to the border management when it comes to Myanmar, the mandate is fractured. Single central agency in this context is Assam Rifles, but various border police also. See, this is the map of Northeast. Right, this is Bangladesh, this is Northeast, this is Arunachal, Nagaland, Manipur, and Mizoram. Right, this is Myanmar, the state of Myanmar. So Assam Rifles has the mandate, but this mandate is shared with special units of states, right, and local police. So one of the recommendations is that uniformed mandate could be given to the Assam Rifles. This uniform mandate would lead to better border management. Second recommendation in this context is a recommendation that has come from straight away from the proposal to Cabinet Committee on Security, that there could be a proposal to raise a Indo-Myanmar border force on the lines of Indo-Tibetan border force. This would obviously not be a new force. Various battalions would be drawn from first Assam Rifles and second ITBP, right? And subsequently they will be merged to create an Indo-Myanmar border force, right? And it would lead to better border management. The third aspect or third suggestion is with respect to revision of free movement regime. See, so free movement regime was a child of its times, the child of the needs that were emanating, right? So and the issues emerging are again very outdated, because right now, erstwhile maybe we did not have the capacity of surveillance when it came to the management of borders, but right now we have the capability and capacity for better border management when it comes to the state of Myanmar or even Bangladesh. So there needs to be a revision of free movement regime. Supposedly, let us say it is visa free entry and exit for, let us say, 15 days, it could be reduced to 10 days, right? And then there is another recommendation with respect to construction of more integrated checkposts and enhanced border infra when it comes to the state of Myanmar. And then lastly, we would need to engage with the state of Myanmar to solicit its cooperation when it comes to the border management. So next, moving on, next 26th of January was obviously Republic Day. So there was no newspaper, as there was a government holiday, and we would just let me just remind you about the preamble of Indian Constitution for that day, because this is more important than any news that you would read. We'll just read the preamble and read the context, basic context for the students who have just started to follow the Daily News Simplified. So the students who are just beginning, preamble comes from the let us say root word, or genesis of this word is from the English word preambulate. Preambulate means to walk ahead. Ironically, preamble to anything, right, cannot be written at the beginning itself, right? Generally, preambles are written at the end of that particular text, but it is called as preamble because it preambulates any kind of draft. In our context, preamble walks ahead of the in the beginning of the constitution. So the preamble to Indian Constitution reads that we the people of India, we means we, that means you and I, us. So we means the sovereignty of India lies in the people, right? Nobody is sovereign. UK is not sovereign. Any kind of king or queens are not sovereign. It is us, we the people of India are the sovereign, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a first sovereign. Sovereign means nobody is above the power to dictate us what to do and what not to do. In the context of India, we are the sovereign. No foreign nation can dictate our foreign policy or domestic policy. Socialist, we already read about socialism in the context of Bihar, ex-Bihar Chief Minister and Bharat Ratna Shri Karpuri Thakurji, right? Then secular means separation of religion from state. India has its own version of secularism, that is principal distance model. Democratic, republic means, what does republic mean? That the head of the state is not a ancestral post. That means the head of the state would be duly elected by the public, right? And it is not a hereditary post. And to ensure to all its citizens justice as in justice in three forms: socio, economic and political. So it is one of the documents that ensures not just political justice, but it acknowledges that without any social or economic justice there cannot be any political justice. So for the existence of political justice there needs to be social and economic justice. That is why social and economic are written ahead of political justice. Then liberty of thought, expression, 5 kind of liberties: thought, expression, belief, faith and worship. To ensure equality of status and opportunity, right to equality emanates from this. And to promote among them all fraternity, a concept that was taken up by the French Revolution. We'll see on the later part of this lecture, we'll see India-French relations. And assuring the dignity, human dignity, is one of the founding principles on which any constitution rests. And as a civil servant, when you go to the fields, one of the primary thing that would be expected out of you is to ensure the dignity of individuals, right, and the unity and integrity of the nation. in our Constituent Assembly this 26th day of November 1949 hereby adopt, enact and give to ourselves this constitution. So this means we have given this constitution to ourselves. Moving on, the last leg of this tiresome lecture for you guys. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate the kind of patience that you have shown while watching this video. So this session was taken by Ankit sir. So from the preliminary standpoint, we took 4 topics. First one was Kaziranga National Park. Second was Aadhaar. Third one was coffee, and fourth one was Gift City. From the factual matrix, these 2 topics were purely factual in nature, and there were no concepts involved. So I have just skipped the topics, and from the standpoint of mains, we will try to add value to both of these issues. So without delay, let us jump to Kaziranga National Park. So as per our discussion in the parent video, the brief summary was that Kaziranga National Park is located in which state? It is located in Assam, and then its genesis lies in 1908 when wife of Lord Curzon, right, Mary Curzon, was the one who was behind the idea of this national park. Obviously back then it was not called as national park, right, but these were only called as, say, protected areas. But the key takeaway points for us are that it is surrounded by 3 rivers: Brahmaputra, Diflu and Dhinsari. So these are the key rivers around which this national park is located. And generally UPSC has in the past asked that which particular river flows, or which national park is located around which mountains. This is an area of interest for UPSC. And another area of interest is that which particular river flows through the national park. Why UPSC focuses on this kind of thing is because rivers are considered as the lifeline of forests and also the wildlife. So naturally, if a particular river is flowing through a national park, it is the lifeline of that national park, and every animal from a small, let us say, rabbit or deer to a apex predator like tiger or rhino would come and have a sip of water in that particular river. So for our value addition, I have made this map, and I have located all the national parks that are located in the state of Assam. So let us walk from east to west. So the easternmost national park is Dibang Patkai National Park, right? This is located, let us say, thoda sa aur we'll do a little bit further eastern side. And then second one is Dibru Saikhova National Park. This is the national park that was there in question, that is Kaziranga National Park. And then this is the northernmost national park in the state of Assam, that is Nameri. Again, the question has in previous years been asked on Nameri Tiger Reserve, right? So this is a quick reminder that Nameri, where is it located, and it is a prominent tiger reserve. Then there lies Orang. To the west of it lies Orang National Park. Here lies the Manas. So Manas and Kazi are twin national parks in which one horned rhinos are formed. And lastly, the latest one, the newest addition to the list of national park, Raimona National Park is the westernmost national park in the state of Assam, and both Raimona and Dibing Patkai, both of these parks got the status of national park in 2021. So this is the factual status of state of Assam when it comes to the provision of national parks. Then the other article that I have taken is with respect to coffee, right? So the key factual metrics over here is that the temperature range which is required for cultivation of coffee is 14 to 26 degrees Celsius. Hot and rainy season is required. Rainfall, high intensity of rainfall is required. So that is why we'll see in the next map that generally coffee grows in valleys. So these kind of rainfall is heavy rainfall is required, but at the same time the water should not stagnate the environment, right? So if stagnation takes place, berries or the roots of the plant will be damaged and coffee production will suffer. So generally coffee cultivation takes place in valleys. So, and again another function that is served by the valleys is that it protects the berries, coffee berries from direct sunlight, right? So the key takeaway points are temperature range is this 14 to 26 degree, hot and rainy season required, rainfall being 100 to 200 centimeter, that means very high rainfall. We'll see that coffee cultivation takes place generally in the western Ghats of India and some portions of eastern Ghat, right? And then it should be sheltered from from direct sunlight and elevation, so it grows on elevation and slopes. So this is a map of coffee regions in India, which state in India owns the tag of highest coffee cultivator, right? So it is the state of Karnataka, and even in Karnataka, Araku Valley is famous for, Araku Valley is in Andhra Pradesh, Kogadu district. Kogadu district is famous for its coffee valleys. So key locations with respect to coffee cultivation are Chikmagalur, Kurg, Bilgiris, Wayanad of Kerala, Travancore. Then on the eastern section, Araku Valley, Manjarabad, Annamalai districts, Shevaroy, Nilgiri and Pulni Hills. Both of all these three hills are there in the state of Tamil Nadu. If a question comes in preliminary that coffee cultivation happens in the southern part of India only, would that be a correct statement? First, because these kind of qualifiers when added to the statement make it very exclusionary, so it should naturally arouse some suspicion in your minds. But apart from that also, certain areas of Assam are also known for coffee cultivation, right? So it would not be correct to say that coffee cultivation in India is only limited to southern part, although southern part dominates in the coffee cultivation, but coffee cultivation happens in certain parts of northeast as well. Then there was a news with respect to edible oil import. And why is it important? Let us trace its roots to the syllabus. So syllabus says that major crops and cropping patterns are important when it comes to our GS paper 3, right? So what was the context of the news? Context was that edible oil imports will have a wider choice, right? And then we also discussed the various PYQs that have been framed by UPSC, the nature of the PYQ, the direction of the PYQ, as well as the expectations from the students are all discussed in the parent video, right? So let us briefly discuss the key factual matrix when it comes to the status of edible oil in India. India imports 16.5 million tons of edible oil. Edible oil is basically the oil which we use for cooking, right? Then right, there is no point for guessing it. Then India has got 61% of import dependency of edible oil, and 57%, you would be amazed to know that 57% of this sufficiency is provided by only two countries, first being Indonesia and then Malaysia, right? Only two countries say we import 57% of our 61% import dependency of oil. Now we also discussed in the particular video which are the various challenges with respect to oil cultivation in India that were first stagnant production, then import dependency, third being inflation, global shocks, right? And then the issue with respect to small farmers, that India may land is so much fractured that there is a prevalence of small farmers, and small farmers cannot grow that much amount of cash crops which would give them remunerative economic benefits. So other key issues, let us try to add value to your understanding. What are the other key issues when it comes to oil seeds in India? The first one being, first is sunflower and groundnut, which are considered as primary, one of the important cash crops, right? Sunflower and groundnut, these are susceptible to rain and pest shocks. So despite all our advances and advanced fertilizers that are being used, these crops are still susceptible. These are very vulnerable crops, and the issue is with the primary issue with respect to pest is with sunflower, and with respect to rain is with groundnut, and both are out of control of, right, humankind. At max, what we can do is that we can provide a good quality pests, so that pests and training, so that we can save our sunflower crops from pest shocks, right? Then there is, from the government's point of view, issue with respect to governance is that there is a lack of comprehensive strategy and policy ad hocism. Now you will be amazed to know what kind of things go on, right? So what will happen is that farmer will grow, let us talk about an entire season. Farmer will grow less. This will lead to government. What will government do? Government will increase the import. When government increases the import, farmer gets further disincentivized to produce. Now let us reverse the cycle. When there is a boom, then also because there is a policy ad hocism when it comes to imports, there is lack of planning with respect to government that is there, and government still imports that particular amount of oil. So this leads to reduction in prices, and once the prices are reduced, farmer again gets disincentivized to produce further crops, right? Then there is an issue that is with respect to the cultivation patterns, and farmers generally cultivate as per the market trends. Then there is an issue with respect to dependence on dryland farming, and dryland farming is not much conducive to the production of these kind of oil based cash crops. Then there is an issue with respect to demand supply mismatch, and another issue that is that again that we had covered, the issue of genetically modified crops, that mostly the western countries which are considered as self sufficient in the arena of oil dependency, they generally have they have not put a kind of moratorium on the usage of genetically modified crops. But India, because we have put a moratorium on the GM crops, this leads to what? Reduced production, and subsequently we'll have to import palm oil, right? And let me remind you that palm oil is not just dangerous for your own health, it is also dangerous for the overall health of evergreen forests, because evergreen forests are cut or orangutans are displaced for the mass cultivation of palm trees, and from which palm is derived, right? What are the way forward? Then again, expanding the area under palm cultivation, but not over there in Malaysia. We'll have to identify new areas in India with respect to expanding the cultivation. And again, we should not try to repeat the same mistakes that are committed by the states like Indonesia and Malaysia, which are cutting indiscriminately cutting the evergreen forest. We'll have to identify new areas in which palm cultivation can be enthused. Then there could be, and we could also go for increasing the MSP for oil seeds, investing in storage and infrastructure facilities to reduce post-harvest losses. Stable and consistent policy would go a long way in developing the uh, ecosystem for these kind of crash crops and oil based crops, right? And then another suggestion could be that for farmers, what can government do? Government can go for real time data sharing with respect to the price fluctuations, so that they could take a conscious decision with respect to going for production of that particular crop or not. Lastly, we discussed the India French relationship. Why? Because French President Emmanuel Macron was the chief guest of this year's Republic Day parade. We also discussed the various pillars of cooperation, ranging from defense to space to nuclear energy, economy, cooperation at international forums, and climate change. So one of the most important policy shift, when we have already discussed all the things in detail in that video. That video perhaps could not be made any better, right? So the only value addition over here was that over the period, the kind of reliance we used to show on Russia when it came to vetoing any kind of perverse action that was taken at the end of United Nations Security Council has been shifted from Russia to an assured veto from France. So the relationship has naturally deepened, be it various defense platforms. See this state of the art beauty, that is Rafa, that is 4.5 generation aircraft, supersonic fighter jet, which we have taken. The manufacturer is again a French company by the name of Dassault. If you notice this missile, this is Mica. It is one of the world's best air-to-air superiority missile. That is perhaps the only compatible challenge to the AMRAAM missile that is used by the neighbor and American military. Then again, there is Scorpion Pandubi, Scorpion submarine. This is again built by technology transfer with the help of France. So the key challenges and way forward with respect to India-France relationship, let us recap. So what are the key challenges? That Russia-Ukraine war has kind of created a schism with respect to the European nations. They are themselves divided whether to side with Russia or whether to side with Ukraine. But since Ukraine is a European country and Russia obviously is also has parts in Europe, but Ukraine is much seen as a much more European country. So the sympathies of mostly the European nations lies with Ukraine, and because India has taken a kind of neutral stand and we have kind of not supported, then kind of have shown our concerns and apprehensions with respect to the issues that were raised by Russia. So it has led to a little bit of coldness in the relationship. Then another issue is with respect to bilateral trade. Any relationship cannot thrive when bilateral trade is very low. So at present, the bilateral trade with respect to India and France stands at 1.4% of our overall trade. So it is very low and abysmal. And then the third concern is with respect to the delays in implementation of key projects. Most importantly, the projects of atomic energy and energy security, that is nuclear power plant, that is Jaitapur nuclear power plant, which is being made with the help of French assistance. Alstom is the name of company which is making it, but there are delays after delays with respect to the construction of this nuclear power plant. So what could be the way forwards? Obviously, way forwards emanate from the problems that are highlighted. First, that we should, both countries should show diligence with respect to the completion of projects. India should, as soon as possible, sign India EU FTA, right? So the free trade agreement again would go a long way in rekindling or re-establishing the relationship. Then again we should focus on P2P, that is people to people relationships. Next being India should be obviously French, what France lies in, French expertise lies in creating kind of state of the art technology, but for the manufacturing and mass manufacturing, what could be done? What is the suggestion? That India can be created as a base for mass manufacturing of weapons, first for the Indian market, and for the defensive weapons we could try to export those defensive weapons. Then recently we have agreed for joint surveillance missions and one of such missions was recently carried out. See, one of the primary points that was being missed over there was that France is also a resident power in Indian Ocean region. What is the meaning of resident power? Resident power means it has got a territory over here in the Indian Ocean by the name of French Reunion Islands, that is located in the Indian Ocean. So the primary responsibility with respect to the provision of overall maritime security lies with India, and then India and France could carry out joint patrols with respect to Indian Oceans. And since the incidents of piracy are again rising in the Indian Ocean region and Horn of Africa region, so we could go for joint patrolling and surveillance missions, and then joint patrols with the help of P-8I Poseidon aircraft in the Indian Ocean region and sharing of intelligence. Then there are possibilities of contract of Hindustan Aeronautical Limited and Safran. Safran is again an engine manufacturer of France. Obviously in this Rafale aircraft also engine made by Safran is used. So Safran for multi-role helicopter that is being indigenously produced, we can go for joint agreement, and then the negotiations are in the advanced stages with respect to the joint development of engine. And then again the same company Safran can be persuaded to transfer the technology for the production of engine for advanced multi-role combat aircraft. That is a vision for that is our vision for a 5th generation fighter aircraft. We do not we do not aim to import any kind of 5th generation fighter aircraft from abroad. We intend to make it at our home. So the engine component again would be provided by the same company which manufactures the engine for Rafale, that is 4.5th generation aircraft. So that is all with respect to the recap DNS. I thank you for your patience. I hope to meet you, and we hope to meet the next week. That would be all from my end. Thank you and have a good night.